and of Diddy Combs, testifying under the pseudonym Jane. This witness told the jury yesterday that Combs physically abused her, forced her to take part in drug-fueled hotel nights.
It was supposed to be a sober party, and while that sounds very nice and genuine, she's explained that at this sober party that she had to have sex with 4 escorts in between escort number 3 and escort number.
The courtroom crackled with tension as Jane took the stand, her voice shaky, but her words piercing the silence like a blade. In a moment now, making headlines worldwide, she testified under oath about a violent altercation involving Diddy. Combs' incident long buried beneath layers of fame, power, and silence. As her statement landed, Diddy visibly lost control, reacting with a shocking intensity that stunned everyone present. Gasps rippled through the gallery. The judge quickly called for order, and even security looked unsure of what to do. This wasn't just another celebrity scandal, it was the public unraveling of a man once considered untouchable. And now, the world is desperate to know, what exactly did Jane say that shattered Diddy's composure?
All of the witnesses gave false testimony on the stand. Regarding Jane, her testimony, I think what was most striking about it yesterday was how similar some of it was to Cassie Ventura, Sean Combs' ex-girlfriend. In particular, Jane testified about how when Cassie Ventura filed her civil lawsuit in November of 2023, she said that she almost fainted. In fact, she may even have fainted because there were 3 pages of that lawsuit, Errol, where she said it was like word for word reading about her own experience. And she said this to Sean Combs. She couldn't believe how much it mirrored what had happened to her. She also testified about being with Sean Combs when that infamous video of him assaulting Ventura at a hotel came out. She was there when he was crafting his apology. And what was really striking, Errol, is that she then talked about a violent incident that happened with them in June of 2024, after that video had come out.
Telling him about her feelings as far as not doing it and throwing up after one particular hotel night or debauchery night or freak-off party where it was supposed to be a sober party. And while that sounds very nice and genuine, she's explained that at this sober party that she had to have sex with 4 escorts in between escort number 3 and escort.
The courtroom was already thick with tension when Jane took the stand, but no one could have predicted the storm her testimony would unleash. Dressed in a navy blazer, hands folded neatly in her lap, she appeared almost fraudulent till she began to speak. Her words were calm at first, methodically outlining a timeline of events, but everything shifted when she recounted the alleged violent altercation with Diddy Combs. "He grabbed me," she said, "and slammed me against the wall." Gasps echoed through the room. Diddy clenched his jaw, his composure slipping as he gripped the edge of the table. Jane continued, describing the confrontation in graphic, emotional detail how she tried to fight back the obscenities he allegedly screamed the warning to stay silent. Her testimony peeled back layers of a man long shielded by fame and power. Reporters scrambled to keep up. The court sketch artist's pencil raced, and Diddy's face turned red as he muttered under his breath. A court officer moved closer. The judge called a recess, sensing the moment was volatile, but the damage was done. Outside, crowds gathered, protesters, media, fans, while inside, Jane was led away. Her part complete, the consequences only beginning. The prosecution looked confident. Diddy's team appeared shaken. For years, rumors of his misconduct had swirled, but never had anyone gone this far in court, laying bare the painful reality of life on the other side of his anger. Jane had become more than a witness. She was a symbol of reckoning. The music industry watched in silence as partnerships were paused, sponsorships re-examined, and allies quietly distanced themselves. In a single day, a decades-long career stood on the brink of collapse.
And then Diddy said, okay, well, it's all out of your system, let's go get back to it. And so we saw more text messages and
that she did not want to engage in these sexual activities with Sean Combs, more specifically with other men in front of Sean Combs, through a series of text messages, and there's voice notes. There's a lot to condense here, and also, as we were talking about, a lot of complicating factors. What were some of the highlights? What do you think are some of the points of her showing, or allegedly showing, she did not want to participate in these sexual activities, these hotel nights, these debauchery nights? What stood out to you?
Yeah, well, a lot of it stood out to me, and it was kind of a slow morning as far as just presenting these mountain of text messages to not only the witness so she could recall everything that she had spoken to with Sean Combs, but also for the jury to kind of understand where I think the prosecution was ultimately leading up to. So, for example, they were showing text exhibits from September 17th of 2023, where Jane was testifying how Diddy was kind of the only one making her perform for her at home, or for him at her home. And she said, I felt like he made such a big purchase, and this was something that I had to do. And that big purchase was her rent, which was about $10,000 a month, and how Diddy kept kind of throwing this in her face. And we see another text exhibit from that same time frame where Jane was saying, I wish we could go back to when we first started dating. I opened Pandora's box and can't close it. One night of fun turned into our entire relationship. I'm crying as I'm writing this. Then you see things like, or not you see, because again, we're not seeing these exhibits. So everything that I'm writing is just transcription from what the prosecution and the witness are kind of going over. So Diddy is replying, girl, stop, let's talk. And then he sends her an audio message. And then you hear Diddy kind of with this raspy voice where he's like, I'm sick in bed. The message that you sent me, what's the problem? We have an actual open relationship. What's the problem? And that Diddy never talked with Jane about her doing these hotel nights in the particular audio message when she was kind of telling.
Meanwhile, court documents revealed Jane wasn't alone. Other women, some anonymous, had submitted written testimony, with several expected to take the stand, painting a disturbing pattern of aggression, control, and manipulation by Sean Diddy. Combs' legal team dismissed the mounting allegations as smear tactics, but public perception was shifting rapidly. Social media erupted with trending hashtags like #DiddyTrial, #JusticeForJane, and #AccountabilityInMusic. As people across the globe dissected every detail, debating whether this was the fall of an icon or a calculated takedown, interest was universal, and each courtroom pause became a moment of speculation. Tensions heightened when grainy hotel hallway footage surfaced, showing a heated exchange ending in a forceful shove-damming when paired with Jane's testimony. A subpoenaed security guard described Diddy as volatile at private events. An assistant recalled him disappearing for hours, returning agitated and with bloodshot eyes. While not directly tied to Jane's account, these stories added weight to the prosecution's narrative of a powerful man long shielded by celebrity. Diddy's courtroom demeanor began to fray his once confident persona, replaced by visible anxiety, whispered consultations with lawyers, and clipped, evasive responses. On the stand, the prosecution built a picture of long-ignored abuse, now brought to light. The defense, meanwhile, tried to cast doubt by attacking Jane's credibility, referencing her finances and past relationships efforts that often seemed to generate more public sympathy for her. Jane's stoic and silent outside the courtroom became a symbol of resilience. She avoided media, made no social posts, and let her testimony stand alone, yet remained a focal point of public attention. In a particularly chilling moment, a former bodyguard testified about a sample-proof lockable room in one of Diddy's homes, claiming he'd been told never to let anyone near a drawing courtroom. Murmurs and immediate objections from the defense, but the implication lingered. Though the judge told the jury to disregard the statement, the seed of suspicion had been planted, and the world was left asking, what was Diddy hiding, and how had he managed to keep it hidden for so long?
In reference to one particular trip in September of 2023, where Diddy told her that he wanted to just take her to New York. They would spend some time together. Jane had thought that, okay, we are going to spend some time together. It's going to be a nice time. She was sending him places for them to go, as far as restaurants to go to here in the city. But she was also kind of texting him some explicit things, such as, for example, Diddy was saying, okay, let's have a good time. Do you have your passport? And then Jane is responding, miss my pretty hard D. Yes, I have my passport, baby. You turned me on so crazy, can't wait. And Jane was saying that Diddy texted her on the flight, and at this point she got particularly upset because Diddy was asking her where Cabral is, and Cabral was one of the escorts that they used. And so Diddy, again, Jane thinking at the time she was flying over to New York for just spending time with her boyfriend, and she was saying that Diddy was wanting an entertainer for that night, or entertainment for movie night. And movie night wasn't going to AMC theaters, which I personally love to do, but movie night was them watching their sexually explicit videos together and their recordings together of these freak off nights. And so Jane was saying, I just remember taking deep breaths and feeling disappointed and defeated. And so Jane responded in this particular message, just got to Wi-Fi again, not sure, baby, in response to whether or not Cabral could fly into New York, because Cabral was somebody that was that resided in Atlanta. And so Diddy said, check red phone. Okay, I have a surprise if that's okay, and just one. And so Jane was saying that Diddy was going to introduce her to someone new. And so that she said that she hated it. She hated this entire concept. And she's getting pretty emotional while she's on the witness stand, kind of recalling that, again, she thought that the two were just going to go for a date night. She was going to enjoy her trip to New York City. And then it ended up being another situation where she had to participate in a hotel night. And so
Outside the courthouse, the case against Sean Diddy Combs took on a life of its own, with daily protests erupting, some backing Jane with signs like "Justice over fame" and "We believe her," while others demanded due process. As tensions rose, major streaming platforms discreetly pulled Diddy-related content from promotions, and a multi-million-dollar ad campaign featuring his music was suspended, showing that the fallout extended well beyond legal boundaries. The narrative intensified when a second woman, going by the alias Lisa, stepped forward with testimony strikingly similar to Jane's death, describing a night filled with rage, violence, and a chilling threat to remain silent. Despite having no prior contact with Jane, her emotional account marked yet another blow to Diddy's defense, and legal experts began to predict that his once mighty empire might not survive, regardless of the trial's outcome. His record label faced new lawsuits, artists demanded transparency, and behind closed doors, industry leaders scrambled, increasingly seeing Diddy not as a legend, but as a liability. Still, some loyal collaborators defended him, labeling the case a witch hunt. And a small group of fans protested what they saw as biased media coverage, but for every voice of support, there were thousands demanding accountability. Finally took the stand. The atmosphere inside the courtroom became suffocating. Though cameras were barred, reporters described an electric tension as Diddy denied all accusations, blaming misunderstandings and media distortion. His tone, however, wavered, sometimes bold, at other times visibly strained. The prosecution's cross-examination was relentless, exposing contradictions in past interviews and highlighting damning statements from those once closest to him. By the end, Diddy appeared rattled, his hands trembled, his voice cracked. As the trial neared its climax, Jane returned to court not to speak, but to watch a silent show of resolve that resonated beyond the courtroom walls. Her quiet presence sent a message. She wasn't backing down, and the world was watching with her. The judge announced that closing arguments would begin the following week, prompting both legal teams to brace for their final showdown while media outlets geared up for wall-to-wall coverage. What began as a single testimony had ignited a national reckoning, one that challenged celebrity protection, power dynamics, and long-standing silence. Regardless of the jury's decision, public opinion had already spoken, and the story, far from over, was only just beginning.
From September 18th of 2023 from Jane and Cabral, because Jane was explaining that an escort was coming over to the hotel, and she didn't like this particular escort, so she ended up sending a message over to Cabral. And we hear about these messages where Jane is saying, "Hey, you want to come to NYC for a day?" And Cabral said, "Yes, I would love to, love." And then Jane says, "Okay, let me set it up now." Cabral sent all his information to her, and then Cabral ended up coming to the Trump Hotel for another hotel night. And again, these are messages from 2023, so fairly pretty recently. But as far as just the lead up to it, and Jane was explaining how Cabral landed, they ended up doing a hotel night, even though she didn't want to do a hotel night. And I think what the prosecution there was kind of sprinkling in that this was sex trafficking by fraud, or at least transportation to engage in prostitution, because she is flying out this entertainer, as she calls him, from Atlanta to New York City, and then they do a hotel night, and then they slowly start to get into the text messages from October, later into November. And what happens in November of 2023, as many of us who have been following this case day in and day out know, is when Cassie dropped her jaw-dropping.
Whatever the verdict, this trial has sparked a reckoning that can't be ignored. It's no longer just about one man's guilt, but about how long the entertainment industry can continue turning a blind eye. Could this be the moment everything begins to shift? As Hollywood holds its breath, the world watches, questioning whether justice is finally catching up to the elite. This case isn't just about guilt or innocence anymore, it's about power, silence, and the courage to speak out. So, if you're following this cultural flashpoint, hit that like button, subscribe for more deep dives, and let me know in the comments. Do you believe this will finally bring real change to Hollywood?